This particular property was established from many centuries ago because this far inland, I'm on a little higher elevation that doesn't seasonally flood out. In the summertime, surrounding areas could be underwater. But this is a little area that's otherwise known as an oak hammock because oak trees grow where it's drier, and this survives throughout the year. What that did on this property is it gave me the chance to be situated in a few important places. Number one, where the water's good, but number two, it happens to be where I'm equidistant between two major hospitals. I met my wife, Michelle, in one of those hospitals. So for us, it was a convenient place only about 2 miles away from where we worked for years and years. And I remember the first time she came here to see what I had worked on for about 10 years before. She saw an overall environment she told her would be healthy. It's one of the reasons for our success in cultivating not simply our own children, but the plants here that we've both regarded as something that's kept us healthy and happy along the way. Some of the plants we've selected for here over decades have been obviously things that have an ornamental value. I like things that may not have a plain green leaf, maybe discolored, reddish color on one side, or variegated type things, because there's a little more interest there. But you'll see certain colors as you walk around that are meant to visually capture your attention. Other things may have flowers that smell really nice. They're not going to be situated in a remote corner. They'll be along a path. The property itself is narrow but deep, so that the back half of the property can be almost a dedicated garden rather than being an appendage of the home site itself. We've designed the property to be user-friendly, certainly sensitive to smells and sights. If a certain plant may have a tactile benefit, a particularly soft, fuzzy leaf compared to thorns, it may be situated where you can feel it. Thorny things kept out of the way. We had little kids growing up here. We didn't want them running up and hugging a thorny plant. The same thing has to deal with even things that make noise. We grow bamboo here. On a nice breezy day, you'll hear the bamboo making noises. We grow fruits here. We grow something called miracle fruit that can actually change your taste. So the way plants interface with all 5 of those senses is one of the ways that we marvel in placing them where we can access them here, all in our home garden. I grew up in New York, where I have my maternal grandmother back in those days, who moved to Miami right after World War II. And as a little boy, when I would visit here, I would see things growing outdoors all year round. Here, everything was green, colorful, and my grandmother particularly liked those plants, and I became first aware of them as a kid. As I was growing up and going to school here is when I then really first started to understand plants perhaps at a different level than my grandmother did. As cultivating and as a horticulturist botanist, now I could approach it more as a scientist and understand not only tropical ornamentals, but botanical medicines as well. One of the benefits of growing up here back in the 1970s and 80s, I had people show me and teach me not simply how to get or access a plant, but how to keep it alive. So there were farmers here who had local knowledge, and nothing beats not only farmers, but indigenous people's knowledge of how to make plants work wherever they're from. They became my mentors. What I've been doing in the last several years for the first time is not simply showing plants and having them awarded, but now a new genus of plants called anthuriums, which are part of the aroid family, seem to be something that people were appreciating some breeding that I've done for over 40 years to try to feature colors in those plants. And I think one of the important things that people need to understand when you develop hybrids, it's not simply what the plant looks like. When I find certain plants that are more robust growers, those are the ones I'll select in addition to those that look prettier. I had a few plants grown from a local grower here, one in particular that was highly awarded at an international plant show called the Tropical Plant International Expo. And 2 years ago, a plant named after my wife, Michelle, took Best New Flowering Plant, which was a great honor. That same plant was put into tissue culture and now is reaching the hands of growers around the world. Over time, You look into thinning out perhaps a collection, but more importantly, into sustaining those valuable plants sometimes that you've collected, perhaps over years. And so your role at that point changes from understanding that we all start as collectors to curate a world-class collection. And then we sort of morph into understanding the role of being a custodian of sometimes some of the world's classiest plants. And in that way, if you think about perhaps a more noble position to be in, a custodian will want people that follow them to know how to take care of those things that may have been acquired over 40 or 50 years of custodial care. I have to understand as a custodian that we're here only during our watch. As custodians, the plants have come from before we were here, and hopefully they will outsurvive us.